Welcome and thanks for joining us today. We've brought in experts who are going to answer your questions about COVID on the farm. For this session, we're talking about why we need to wear cloth face coverings during the COVID-19 pandemic with Renee Anthony and Kate Crawford from the University of Iowa's College of Public Health. So, is wearing a face covering all we really need to do to protect ourselves from COVID-19?
So the answer is no, but I think this is a good question because this is such a big topic right now. And I think people are trying to understand where these face coverings kind of fit into all of this. But it's important to remember that this is just one of the things that we need to do individually to reduce the spread of COVID. So staying home when sick or when you might have been exposed to someone who is sick, keeping our physical distance, so maintaining that at least 6 feet from other people. Hand washing is so important, at least 20 seconds with soap and warm water to minimize the spread we might get from touching something that may be contaminated with the virus. Covering coughs and sneezes is important. And then, of course, covering our faces. So wearing these face coverings, making sure our noses and our mouths are covered, while we're around other people that aren't in our household, to help reduce the spread. Those are all things we need to do.
How does wearing a face covering help?
Yeah, it's really important to remember that this face covering is intended to protect people when aerosols are coming out of your mouth, which could be from talking, singing. We've had a lot of people become infected working in choirs. So anytime that you are yelling at somebody or talking loudly, you could be generating aerosols, and those aerosols, things that are coming out of your mouth, may contain that virus.
What's a good example of how that might happen on a farm?
On a farm, just yelling at a coworker that may be 20 feet away. You have to raise your voice, use a lot of energy in your lungs, and project your voice. And so just the fact of yelling for somebody's attention could generate aerosols that are going to come out of your mouth. And it's those aerosols that include that spit particle, and that one spit particle may contain a virus that somebody that is within 6 feet of you, if you're not wearing a face covering, could inhale or get that particle on their eye, mouth, nose, and become infected.
So, how does a face covering work?
So the face covering is actually helping, it's creating a barrier for those particles that we just talked about. So when you're talking or laughing, those particles come out. If the face covering's there, then that serves as a barrier that those particles have to get through in order to get into the air to infect other people. But it's really important to know that it's not going to capture everything. And certainly, if you're sneezing or coughing, you should still cover your mouth while you're wearing it into your elbow. But how it's working is that it's reducing the amount of potential virus that's coming out with those particles.
Yeah, one way to think about it is what they're communicating in healthcare environments is that it's really a source control. And you as a person that are generating particles, by wearing this face covering, we're controlling you as a source by keeping those particles down in the environment. So we're basically asking you to wear a cover so that you are limiting the amount of risk that you are introducing into the environment. Recent data indicate that if 80% of the general population wears this in situations where they're interacting with other people, that if we have 80% of people wearing face coverings, that we could eliminate the spread of COVID in our region.
Wow.
When should farmers wear a face covering?
That's a great question because a lot of farmers think, well, I don't need to wear one. And most of the time, they may be right. They don't need to wear a covering when they're working alone. So if they're out in the field by themselves, if they are driving a tractor and nobody else is in the cab, these situations, they're not infecting anybody else. There's nobody around them. So you don't need to wear a face covering if you don't have other people around you. Another rule of thumb is if you are working and living on the farm and your family is sharing the same household with you, you don't need to go ahead and wear a mask unless you have symptoms and other reasons, but you don't need to put a face covering on to protect those in your family because you're already sharing the same germ pool. It's when other people come to your farm or when you have employees that are working on the operations with you and are, within 6 feet or 10 feet or 12 feet, you really want to make sure that you are not infecting them and that they're not infecting you. So people that are outside of your household really should be asked to wear a face covering, and you should also be putting a face covering on so you're not getting them ill. If you have a really small farm and don't have a lot of people coming onto it, think about your delivery people. You want to make sure that they're protected and that they're protecting you. So keep a distance with those folks. If you've got a contractor that's coming out to your site, keep a distance from them and put on a mask if you need to give a hand and work closely with somebody.
Farmers are used to wearing respirators. Can they wear face cloth coverings instead?
No. The simple answer is no. These either cloth or disposable face masks that people are being asked to wear to prevent the spread of COVID are not respirators. So if there is a need to reduce exposures to particles, then you do need to wear a respirator that is approved to reduce those particles. So those would be things like your N95 mask, which is shown here. There are also chemical respirators, elastomeric ones, like the bottom picture shown. That's a full face. Chemicals are going to pass right through a cloth mask. So if you need to protect yourself from things like ammonia or pesticides, you really need to wear a certified respirator for this. And so the one that we showed in the picture here has a green cartridge. So that's for ammonia. And then it has a purple filter on the top, which is for particles. So if you need to protect yourself from chemicals or dusts, you really have to wear a respirator, not just rely on this cloth face cover. Might see people putting a cloth mask over an N95, and a lot of healthcare workers are doing that because they want to protect that N95 respirator. So they're putting a cloth face covering over that N95, so that's going to keep their N95, which is protecting them, clean from getting sneezed on, so they can take off the cloth mask, throw it in the laundry, clean it, and their N95 can be used for multiple patients, so they can not infect people in medical situations. So if you do have an N95 and want to keep it protected, then you would actually want to put a cloth mask over it in order to extend the life of an N95.
So some of the respirators that you see, if they have a valve on them, that's an exhaust valve. So those are not good for situations. It's similar to kind of what's said here. Anything that you exhale is going to come out of that valve. So there's still potential that if you're wearing that, you may be infecting others. So that may be protecting you, but you still want to keep a distance. So it depends on what situation, why you're wearing that. If you're wearing it for COVID, you need to make sure you're maintaining your distance still, because anything you exhale is still going to come out of that valve.
Yeah, that's really important, that if you see or are working with somebody that has that exhalation valve on their respirator, you do need to stay that 6 feet away from them.
Great. Well, thanks for going over these with us. Is there anything else that you have to say to farmers about wearing face masks?
I think the important thing to remember, we kind of talked a lot about just the why today. So this is certainly a new thing to do. But right now it's really important, and it's just kind of one piece. So as we said before, we still need to keep a distance. We need to hand wash, but as Renee mentioned, we're learning that wearing these face coverings can have a really big impact on reducing the spread in our community, and kind of getting us back on track to where we want to be. So I think it's important, to think about, this is what we're doing. We need to kind of step up and do this for each other at this point.
Yeah, there's a lot of talk on the news about people that, just absolutely don't want to wear these masks. But if you think about your role in society, especially as a farmer, they're committed to their communities, they're committed to their neighborhoods, their family, their friends, and wearing this face covering while you're working around other people just is another way to continue that demonstration of commitment to your community, to your neighborhood, to your church, to your stores, to your emergency responders. It's a way of basically showing that you care, because again, you won't know that you're carrying COVID virus until much after you may have infected people. So it's a courtesy and a kindness to actually adopt wearing these when you're working or living around people that you want to protect.
Thanks, Renee and Kate, for giving us all of this information about why we should be wearing face coverings in public and how to prevent spreading COVID on the farm. Next, we'd like to invite everyone to join us for our upcoming videos, where we'll be inviting a health expert in to talk about health concerns about wearing cloth face coverings, and then another one where we'll be talking about tips for selecting a cloth face covering that works for you. Do you have other questions about preventing COVID-19 on the farm? Visit our website at gpcah.org or email us at cph-greatplainscenter@uiowa.edu. And keep an eye out for our upcoming videos